welcome back to my channel with myself, Isabella. Today we're going to be talking about my journey with my Pointe shoes and the journey to my perfect shoe. But before we begin, I have some new courses coming out. A course on my website for développé front coming very soon, along with lots more classes online. You guys asked me for a lot more bars and centers of all levels, which I have listened and I have filmed, so those are coming very soon. I've had amazing results from my arabesque course and my amazing feet course, and it's really amazing to see my members improve and grow, and there's lots more coming to the memberships as well, with no extra cost. You get much more interaction with me, and so you feel much more included with me, and I help you even more on your journey, and I'm so excited for you all. So if you're not a member of BWI, you can start your 7-day free trial, link in the description. So take the chance and have 7 days worth of classes, courses, grow your knowledge, and just see what I have to offer to you to help you become the best dancer, the most knowledgeable dancer you can be, where you train smart and not necessarily train hard, but you're doing the correct exercises every day for not that long, and you'll see the results very, very quickly, because these are all exercises I did to get me from a mediocre level to top of the school at Vaganova. So it's my turn to share with you. So guys, now let's talk about my Pointe shoes. So this was a hard journey. These are the Pointe shoes in question. They're very beautiful, and although what I find so fascinating is, although these just look like a normal pair of Pointe shoes, there is so much to them that is very bespoke and very different, and yes, very independent to my foot. These are made by Block, but the actual shoe is designed by a man called Bob Martin, who retired, and then he gave his business to Block, who now continue on his bespoke Pointe shoe business. Bob Martin still does consultations, so if you're looking for your own bespoke shoe, then I really recommend getting in contact with him. I'll leave his details down below in the description. I haven't been sponsored to do this. I just am very I'm I'm a huge fan of Bob and his wife Pat, who have done amazing things for not just me but many major ballerinas. Marinella Nunes uses his shoes. Darcy Bassel used to use his shoes when she was working, and amongst many, many more. I think Francesca Hayward in the Royal Ballet uses them as well. Yeah, he's a phenomenal shoemaker. I'm going to share my journey up till that point though. When I was at the Royal Ballet School, obviously I grew quite quickly when I was about 14, and I wasn't used to, having all of a sudden large feet. So the thing that grew first for me was my feet, and yeah, I know you're probably imagining someone a bit clown-like, with the big massive feet. But that's not really an exaggeration. I probably looked a little bit weird for a while. And on top of everything else, my feet were quite weak, because they grew, and then the muscles between the metatarsals were weak, and I was getting pain, bursitis, which is sort of inflammation on each metatarsal. Really not very enjoyable at all. And on top of that, we were told to wear freed, because the Royal Ballet School really advocates freed shoes, and they just really, really, really didn't suit me, and they really hurt as well. They weren't very comfortable at all. And so with my archy feet, and not only were they very archy, they were also very weak for a while. I was just going through shoes so quickly, like it didn't make any sense. I would do one lesson and then my shoes had died, which I didn't, which was very stressful. You have to sew shoes every single day, and at 13 that's quite a lot. And so I moved on then to Freed Studios, which seemed to last a bit longer and they were a bit harder. So I was like, okay, these are working pretty well for me right now. So I wore those for a time. But yes, it wasn't until I started to have pain from my huge growth spurt, pain in my feet, along with the rate at which they were growing. There was one evening, now this is like really, I still can't believe this actually happened. There was one evening I had no shoes left. I was at the Royal Ballet School, I had no shoes because my feet had grown a lot. And I was like, Mum, my shoes don't fit, I can't get them on. She was like, oh my goodness. So she came to pick me up at the Royal Ballet School one evening, maybe one Saturday afternoon, and the Freed shop closed at around 5. So we raced to the Freed shop. And the Royal Ballet School, the lower school, which is in Richmond Park, is not close to the centre of London. It's like a good 45-minute journey. So we raced there, and I fitted some shoes, some Freed shoes, just off the shelf, and they seemed to fit. In fact, they were a little bit baggy, and I was like, let's just get the ones that are slightly bigger than I want, because my feet are probably going to grow again. So we got 9 pairs of shoes, and they were a little bit baggy. So I went home, and the whole of Sunday, I sewed 9 pairs of shoes. I sewed all of them. I didn't want any chance of running out or having to sew more, or them dying quickly. And I'm not even kidding. The next day, I put them on and they wouldn't friggin' fit. And I was like, Mum, they don't fit anymore. She's like, what are you talking about? And I showed her, I was like, I can't get them on. And she literally thought I was a freak. I'm kidding. But I was just like, it made no sense. It made no sense at all. So something was going on with my feet, and that should have been a clear sign that I was going to be extremely tall. I wasn't even that tall at that point. I was probably only like 5'5". I was kind of average in the class. But then all of a sudden my feet were on their journey to be a size 7, UK 7. So I was like, okay. So that was very stressful. And so they didn't fit anymore. And we couldn't return them because I'd sewed them all. So yeah, I managed to get some replacements. But then this was the beginning of, do you know what? Need to find a solution here. So I was introduced to Bob Martin. I forget how exactly that happened. But I found him and we went to his workshop at the time. This was when he was independent. He wasn't working with Block or anything. He was still working. And I went to his workshop in Harrow, which is just outside of central London. And he's working in this sort of business centre, this sort of warehouse. And he had all these seamstresses in there sewing all the shoes. And I turned up and he was this sweet middle-aged man, and he was just extremely sweet, and so was his wife Pat. And we sat down and I explained the situation. I said, look, my feet are like really archy and stuff, but they're not very strong at the moment, and I'm just going through shoes left, right and centre, and then no shoe seems to be correct. And then you could clearly see how passionate he was about his shoes, and he had pictures of ballerinas who were wearing his shoes all around, including Darcy. And there's a photo of Darcy. I think it's when she's in the Sugar Plum, doing the Sugar Plum Fairy, and she's on the poster for the Royal Ballet. And he showed me her shoes and basically demonstrated how beautiful his shoes are in comparison to another photo when she was in, I think it was Swan Lake, and the shoes were baggy and stuff. And he was basically saying, look how the shoe fits her beautifully and how there's no baggy satin, like this is my work. And I was so passionate about his work, and basically, made the point that's very correct of no foot is the same. Like, I don't think any ballerina should be buying shoes off of the rack. Like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, there's no, we're putting so much weight of our body in our feet, on our toes. Like, of course you're going to get injured and cause damage if the shoe doesn't fit you like a glove. Like the shoe should just be, a continuation of your foot. It should, be extremely tailored. And I learned that very quickly. Now, it wasn't plain sailing with Bob. Obviously, when you're trying to design a shoe that suits you, it takes several goes. These are version 8 of the many shoes I've had from Bob. But what was interesting again is as my feet changed, as my feet got stronger, my shoe changed. So by this point, I was moving to Russia. I think I'd had maybe 2 versions from Bob, and they felt good, but they weren't there yet. But they were on their way. But things were like, oh, the block was too small for me, and I'm very tall, so I needed a good surface area to balance. And some may say, oh, that's cheating or whatever. And I don't think so, because I wanted to have the correct support for someone who's as tall as me, and to give me the opportunity to find my balance a little bit easier. I mean, again, ballet's really difficult. I want to be able to use them, and show off my technique well in a shoe that suits me. So yes, many versions. And I was at the Royal Ballet School for just, 1 or 2 years after maybe 1 year after I discovered Bob. So I went through just a couple of versions with Bob. However, one thing that stuck with me was on the back of the shoe, obviously you put the size of your feet. And I was always made to feel a little bit insecure about the size of my feet at school, because everybody around me was literally tiny in size, and I was growing really quick. And one time the teacher said my shoes that weren't Bob's, they were Freed's. She was like, your shoes look like boats on you. And I was like, okay. And she would stuff me. She actually stuffed my foot in a shoe that was a size and a half too small, and I had to do Pointe in shoes that were like far too small for me, because she thought my feet looked too big. I won't name who that is. If she's watching, she knows. And that was like not very comfortable, obviously. So I got super insecure. So I actually asked Bob. They aren't on these actually. By this point I was secure, but I asked Bob to stamp on the sole. This is how bespoke you can make it, guys. I asked him to stamp on the sole the size 5.5 instead of whatever my shoe size was. I actually forgot in the end. These say 6.5, but maybe that's the correct version. And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem at all, we can do that. Because I just felt so insecure. So when someone said, what size feet are you? I could just be, 5.5, no problem. Yeah. So then I got to Vaganova, and I was already I had a few more versions under my belt with Bob. But the teachers didn't like my shoes at that point, and it was around the stage of my feet were getting stronger, but my shoes were still rock solid, and they didn't need to be rock solid. It was also around the time we were doing more and more point work, and I had these rock solid shoes, and it was very hard for me to put on rock solid shoes and be able to dance, straight away. They were the kind of shoes that were probably better for a young person with very archy feet who's only doing a few échappés and lots of relevés in the week, point specific exercises, and can have a few weeks to break them in. But as I was getting more and more professional, these ultra hard shoes were impossible to break in straight away, and impossible to jump in, impossible to do a whole pas de deux variation straight away, So it was very hard for me to say have 3 shoes on the go. because I needed a good few weeks to get some pairs ready. And I noticed the arch was not quite, the arch here was not quite molding to my foot. So in general, they were just a bit too hard. And so then I said, okay, I need to make adjustments here and make the shoe a little bit softer. So we took out one of the nails. I used to have 2 nails here. He used to put an enforced arch support in here, and that got removed because basically I didn't need it anymore because my feet were stronger, which is good. And basically the stronger you are in your feet, the less support you actually need, because my body was getting stronger as well now. I'd been going through a couple of injuries and that forced me to look after my core more. So as I was dancing, I was lifting more out of my legs, therefore needing softer shoes. And so finally we got to version 8 and they are just my shoe. I'm very happy with them. I put them on and they're good to go. Maybe if I was dancing, professionally, in a company again, these shoes would need changing again. But these are definitely shoes that, are softer. Therefore, if I was in a company again, I'd need maybe 15 to 20 pairs a month, which is pretty standard, to be honest, with going through shoes when you're in the company. If you're not wearing Gain or Mindens, which lasts much longer. But Gain or Mindens never suited me. So now I'm going to share with you exactly what specs I have on here. And they're quite interesting. I'll try to remember all of them. So on the back, we have the size 6.5. So that's obviously my size. Single X. And the lightning bolt. So these are made by Block Now. So Block Now, along with their stock shoes, have a separate sort of factory going on where they have a different last, different paste. They're not machine made, these are handmade, whereas the others that they have are more machine made. I think I might be wrong there, but basically these are made separately to their stock shoes because they're bob shoe really. So I always found the heel at the back was a little bit short, and I also wanted a little bit more flexibility here at the back. So the sole finishes earlier, so the sole finishes there and then the shoe carries on, and this is extra fabric you see that goes up, so this would be nice and high up my heel, so that it wouldn't slip off and it would feel really nice and snug in there, because I really didn't want, it's a really nasty feeling when you feel like your shoe's going to fall off, and this just felt really nice and snug and high on my heel, so really, really perfect. And then my arch is very high, and so I always found that the sides of the shoe, the satin, was always too short, too low for me. So when you go on Pointe and you can see someone's arch bulging out of the side, like the arch of their foot coming out because their arch is so high. We didn't want that. Obviously it doesn't look so pretty and you feel again unsupported. So this piece of fabric is higher than a usual shoe, so that doesn't happen. Along with this part of the shoe is longer for me, longer. I also wanted, often when you ask for longer satin, that doesn't really change the fact that the actual block and the strength of the block will finish maybe here. But I said, my toes are long and I want more support. So they put extra paste here. So the whole shoe is basically nice and strong here and supported. I also wanted more support here because of the fact that I asked for this part of the shoe to be softer, and we asked for a popping sole. So the sole at the bottom pops out a little bit, so there's less paste, there's not much paste here, so that I could get a good range of demi-pointe quickly when the shoe's new. That was very important to me, so that I could basically dance anything straight away, because it's awful running in pointe shoes when they're rock solid, or trying to jump in pointe shoes when they're rock solid, and this stopped that from happening. So yeah, we're not done yet. Also, I had a little extra, let me just check. Yeah, so here I didn't want a nail there either in the top, so that I had good range here. And this little extra bit of wood where it's slightly red there, is an extra arch support. So I kept the arch support in, but no nails. So I didn't want any nails in the shoe, because I wanted, or limited nails. There's one nail there, but that's it. Because before I'd had too many nails, and that basically, stopped me from being able to move the shoe at all. A lot of shoes have nails up here, and the ballerinas take them out anyway. So I said, let's just not put one in at all, to save me some grief trying to get the nail out. And then the actual block itself is large. I wanted a large block because, again, I'm tall and have large feet. I needed a good surface area for turns. And this is very interesting, and I don't think this is done before with anybody, is the actual block is at an angle of 110 degrees. And I'll tell you why. Because when I moved to Russia, I was on a raked stage. And so it wasn't like a normal studio setting where the stages, the studios are all flat. I had really archy feet, as I keep saying. And if I was on a normal surface area, like very flat, then it would push me over more. So I said to Bob, can you do any... Well, actually, he said, well, what I can do is I can make the actual toe at 110 degree angle. So you feel like you're straight up, but you don't feel like you're going to go over too much. And I was like, oh, let's try that. So it's very minimal. You're talking 20 degrees, like you can barely see it, but it makes a huge difference to me. And you don't feel it so much that it's like, whoa, I'm being pulled back. Not at all. It just stops me from going completely over, which was really important for me, especially on a heavily raked stage. And when I went to the Mikhailovsky Ballet, I think the rake was even greater than the Vaganova, and I needed extra help. So yes, and as you can see, it's a little bit wider at the front, and then it narrows as we go back, because I have a wide front of foot, but my heel is narrow, and so I needed that. But they're very beautiful shoes. Bob's shoes he used to work for Gamba, which is not a thing anymore, because he goes way back. And then he started his own business. He left Gamba and started his own business, but the fabric was quite orange, sort of freed looking shoes. And as you can see in some of the pictures with Darcy, but then when he gave his business to Block, obviously the satin became more like Block, as to represent their brand. And I actually ended up preferring it because I just think I really like the colour of Block and how the satin sort of moulds into the tights more. And they just look a little bit more pearlescent and sort of beautiful and majestic. And, I will never ever go to a stock shoe. I think I stopped wearing stock shoes when I was 13. And it made all the difference to me. I think I've only ever had one foot injury, excluding just pain from growing. But actual foot injury, I think I've just had one, and that was from doing a lot of hops on Pointe for a competition, over and over and over again. So just too many hops, I just got a bit inflamed, but that's it. And considering how much work I did and how much of a load it was, I really don't think that's bad at all. And I think it's also down to, I really looked after my feet with the padding, the Epsom salts, baths, the toe spacers in my shoes to stop me getting bunions. After doing lots of Pointe work, I used to put my feet up every night, and also just having the correct shoes and working hard to find the perfect shoe for me. Not only will you find your dancing more enjoyable and less stressful, your shoes will last longer because they're a bit more tailored to you. But that's the story with my shoes. And as you can see, it's not that simple. And I think it's quite rare that it's simple. Obviously, some people find Grishko 2007s and then wear those for the rest of their career. Those people are lucky. But actually, they're probably missing out, because you could, really afford to invest in yourself, especially when you're doing something so high caliber. Invest in yourself and make a Pointe shoe that is specifically yours, and it feels very special, and they feel like an extremity to your foot. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and what's your Pointe shoe journey. I would love to find out and love to hear what sort of trials and errors you've been through yourself. Much more content coming. If you haven't subscribed, because guys, I know a lot of you, and actually, the analytics tell me that a lot of you come to watch my videos, but you haven't actually subscribed. So, and you may not be aware that you're not subscribed. So click the subscribe button right now, and then you won't miss anything. All right. Thank you so much. Hope you are well and happy and wonderful. Bye for now.